Ahoy divers, and welcome back to Deep Dive Gaming. I am the Mariner, and tonight we have very special guest, Kinggath. Hi Kinggath, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. And if anyone can let me know if the volume levels are good, I will be much appreciative.
If you need me
Without
to scream, let me know. I can shout.
I'm doing that internally as we speak. Okay, so we're gonna jump right into the thing because I know you don't have a lot of time. Granny Vets, thank you for letting me know about the audio. Welcome to the stream. And I'm gonna start pretty much with the big one. How many hours
Okay.
did you put into Fallout 4 before you decided you needed to fill in the gap left by Bethesda? That is the settlement system.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think I did. I played originally on Xbox One. I think my first playthrough got about to 200 hours, and at that point I had done pretty much everything in the base game. Had all the map markers explored, did all the companion quests, etc. Sided with the Institute. Go Institute. Um, and then I waited for some DLC to come out, and then I started another playthrough, and then that's when I started going through my notebook of like, here's the things that bothered me while I was playing. This is like a habit I've had gaming forever. I started making mods in high school, and like since then, I've always when I play a game, especially like big games like this where I know I'm going to put a lot of hours into them, I'll take notes of things that irritate me, so I know what to look for in mods. And then this time, it got to a point where there were a couple mods I wanted that didn't exist. So I would say it was about 200 hours my first playthrough, and maybe like 30 or 40 into my second, and then I got the itch.
Oh, so it didn't take too long. I know a lot of
No,
my
not
viewers
not
have.
long at all. I think I was like hungry for some Fallout when it came out. Like it hit at just the right time in my life when Fallout 4 came out, where I was like, oh man, I haven't thought about this franchise in ages. Like I'm ready. Let's go. I even got into what was the mobile game where you build a little vault?
Fallout Shelter.
Fallout Shelter. I got like super into that just because I just was hungry for some more Fallout, and I had like and then I think I probably played through 3 and New Vegas in preparation for Fall for 4, and so like I was primed and ready for when 4 came out.
Granny Vats, thank you for the follow. Also, Shadow Man fan 1 and Silent Mac, if you're here, thank you for the follows. Okay, so we got that one done. So the next one that I wanted to ask for sure was who came up with the story for Sim Settlements 2, you or Sarek?
So Rick, definitely.
Nice.
So Sim Settlements started out as it was just me trying to not have to build all the settlements over and over again because I wanted to get really detailed. So there was this mod called OC Decorator. It was one of the first like big settlement mods that came out, and it lets you basically take any item, convert it into a static, and place it. And so you would build out, shelves and all the stuff that Bethesda gave us, but then they were all empty, right? So then it was like you'd literally go collect stuff, go collect Coca-Cola bottles and plates from around the world, and then put them into this thing, and they would come out as a static, place them on the shelves manually. And I was having a lot of fun doing that, and I built out, maybe a tenth of Sanctuary. It's a giant settlement, and thinking like, oh my god, am I gonna have to do this every playthrough? Like that's gonna get real boring. And this was before we had transfer settlements. Like had transfer settlements came out before I got the idea to do some settlements. Some settlements might not exist because
Oh,
that would
no.
have solved that problem.
Well, we were lucky
Uh,
then that you got there first.
I barely got. I don't know if I got. I actually don't know if I got there first. But by the time we either released in the same month, and one I don't remember which of us beat the other one. We could check that on if we went to Nexus. But we came out like really close to each other. But I was already, I already dove in deep and had been working on it for a while at that point.
Nice, nice.
And so the original Sim Settlements, it was like I just want to solve that problem. And then I had the idea of I didn't know how to do it though. I was like, I don't know how to export a settlement. I didn't have any. I wasn't doing anything with F4SE. We've since figured out clever ways with debug logs to do it. Like that's how Workshop Framework does it. But even that wouldn't work without F4SE. Fortunately, Dante, the creator of Transfer Settlements, helped out with the Workshop Framework layout system, and but that's a whole other story. But to get back to the point of Sarek, excuse me, as SS1 was initially my attempt to solve that problem, and like as I'm building it, I realized I could kind of solve a lot of my problems with with Fallout 4, because the next problem that came up after we solved the okay, I don't want to have to rebuild this all the time is the settlements didn't matter at the end. So like all the when I started playing Fallout 4 and I got to build a settlement and Preston was there and telling me that people cared and like there's you go to a new settlement and they need your help and you start getting Minutemen patrols coming through. It's like, this is amazing. Like I'm building this empire toward that's going to help rebuild the world. And then at the end, it didn't matter to anybody, right?
Yeah.
Like none of the characters react to the fact that you build up all these settlements. There's no like big payoff moment. There's kind of like there's the battle in the castle to defend it, but other than that, like the settlements are completely irrelevant to the story, and that kind of bothered me. So when some settlements took off, I'm sorry, what were you saying?
I was agreeing with you pretty much.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I know I talk a lot, so feel free to just be like, "Hey, Kinggath, hold on."
Okay, well, you're still in my mind. You're still answering that question because it's good backstory that I don't know if you get into often in your own stream. So I kind of wanted to.
Yeah, because everybody there's heard me say it a million times,
right?
So I can't keep telling it. So the so the story. So then I wanted to solve that problem, and Sim Settlements like blew up. Like it was crazy. The first couple of months after Sim Settlements came out, the first like probably 3 weeks. Well, first of all, I did something dumb. I had a vacation planned like the week after we launched Sim Settlements 1, and when I say we, me basically, I had like one other person who gave me some assets. A guy who went by VG created some of the demolition explosions that we still use today in Sim Settlements when you detonate the plots. I just thought it would be cool if the buildings exploded, and we couldn't figure that out, so we just created like the foundation exploded, right? You get the little puff of dirt when you scrap agricultural or whatever. And I just thought that would be fun, and he added that in. And otherwise, it was just me doing that. And I launched Sim Settlements, and basically for about 7 to 8 hours a day, it took me that long to answer comments and questions and emails. Like it was just hundreds and hundreds of messages coming in every single day. It was wild.
That leads actually into one of the questions I was going to ask. Did you think Sim Settlements 2, let alone Sim Settlements 1, but Sim Settlements 2, did you think it would blow up as big as it did?
No, and Sim Settlements 1 I think still has out-downloaded Sim Settlements 2. It's still, because obviously Sim Settlements 2 came out after the prime of Fallout 4, right? Like Fallout 4, like it tends to be Bethesda's games have like, they're really big up front, and then they will get little bursts of excitement around when the DLC come out, and then when the modding tools come out, there's like a year in there where people are like hype on Fallout 4. And Sim Settlements 2 came out after all that. So like Sim Settlements 1 to this day, as far as I know, still has far more downloads than Sim Settlements 2. But I think Sim Settlements 2 has a much more passionate user base. Like,
oh yeah,
a lot more folks who follow it try and grab every update, are really in the know about what happens in the story and with the mechanics. Whereas Sim Settlements 1, we had that, but I don't think to any, there wasn't.
Yeah. Please just.
Like the characters are the glue, man. The characters are so important, and this is what the problem we had to solve was. And this is circling back to the first question of getting Sarik involved and a lot of others. It's not just me and Sarik. Sarik is in charge of all the writing, but there are tons of people on the team. Though not as big as some people might assume we are. Yeah. So when Sim Settlements 1 took off, first of all, a huge thanks to Demanding, who without which I would not have survived that first couple of weeks with moderating and everything. Demanding just was somebody that I met randomly on the Nexus Mod Discord, who had put out Creative Clutter, and I had reached out and said, "Hey, Creative Clutter is really cool. I love this. I was building with it, but hey, check out this thing I'm working on." And Demanding was like, "This mod is going to blow up. This mod is going to be one of the biggest mods ever." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." Like it didn't click for me, because to me, I had released Salvage Beacons a few months before it, and it did pretty good at the time. It had like 50,000 downloads. Like it was no slouch, but it was no like place everywhere or anything. So to me, it was just like, all right, people like my stuff, fine. I'll keep putting out stuff for a while, because there's a certain level of I've talked about this a lot on my stream and with my team of like, we will say something like, as creatives, we'll generally like to say things like, I do this for myself, or like, it doesn't matter if I have an audience or not. But at the end of the day, if you do something and no one pays attention to it, it's way less fulfilling and interesting, because it feels like no one cares, right? So there is a certain minimal threshold where you want to have a certain level of people who care before you put in more time into something. And so I was getting that with Salvage Beacon, so I was happy with that. If I hit that number on some sellers, I'd be happy. And Demanding it said, no, this is gonna be huge. It's gonna be one of the biggest mods of Fallout. Demanding happened to be right, but I didn't expect that, so I planned a vacation. So I was out of town. So then I'm in Las Vegas with my wife, and I'm just dinking around with my phone the whole time trying to answer messages, but I could only do it to a certain extent, and Demanding kind of filled in and helped out with a lot of that. So forever grateful for that, because that would have been a terrible vacation, worrying about my inbox, and I didn't need to, but it just was like I'd never had such success with a creative project that I'd been involved with, because like I said, I've been modding my whole life, and I don't talk about my previous mod life because some of it was done as a teenager, and we all are into some cringy stuff as teenagers. So I try to keep. So I have like 2 mod lives now. My old username will go to the grave with me. So when Sim Settlements blew up, I took that opportunity to look through my notebook and be like, all right, well, what are the other problems I want to solve? I bet I could recruit help. And so I cast this giant net, and I was like, let's go big. So I was like, so I started casting. I was like, I want writers, I want voice actors, I'm looking for artists, and just recruited like crazy. I think at one point we must have had 70 people working on Sim Settlements. And like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to manage a team of that scope. And so I was just like, kind of just kept having meetings with people. And then like, as soon as somebody was excited about something, like, all right, you're in charge of that, let's go. And so we had this vision for, all right, the original pitch was, let's design a bunch of settlements, and we'll do something like transfer settlement blueprints for them all. Well, let's design a bunch of settlers with individual stories. The original goal was 120 settlers with stories, and they would come to your settlements as you built them up, and you would learn about them, and then you'd get to recruit them. And then there was going to be a main story that would tutorialize Sim Settlements, because to me, my favorite systems games of my life have always been the ones that have a good story built into them. And I said, let's look to Blizzard. Let's look to like Warcraft 3 and StarCraft 2, who these games have these really nice or really good stories in them, and also teach you these like really complex mechanics. So by the time you get to the end of the story, you've been slowly drip fed all the mechanics, and then this otherwise, really complicated system to wrap your head around is like now second nature to you, and then you're ready for multiplayer. We don't have multiplayer, but the same kind of idea applies. So I worked with a whole bunch of writers during that time. We got a whole bunch of voice actors involved, and that project started in what year was that? It was basically the either the year we released Sim Settlements. It must have been the year we released Sim Settlements, or I released Sim Settlements. So I think I released it in, I'm so bad with these dates, March 2017 maybe. And then we were working on that stuff, which became Sim Settlements 2. We started working on that probably 3 months after that is when I started doing that big recruitment drive, and worked on it ever since. So that's 6 years now that we've been working on it, and a lot of people have come and gone over time. And when we first started recruiting, I got 2 people involved. I picked 2 of the writers to work on the main story. They were going to work on the tutorial side of things, and one went by Poet, and the other one went by Son of Soul Reaver. And I don't know if either of them are still at Evolved at all in the modding community or do anything in the modding community anymore, but they started the quest line design, and they came up with Jake, although I think his name was something different at one point. I think he might have been James or Jake or Jack, something like that. And I think we settled on Jake because the player voices it a few times.
Yeah, it's totally a Jake voice. It's like Jack or John or whatever wouldn't have done as well.
Oh yeah, especially now. Like, can you imagine if we just retconned his name on you? You'd be like, no, that's Jake. Get out of here.
And then I was thinking, you were saying Sim Settlements 1 still is out doing Sim Settlements 2. Well, Sim Settlements 2 is complete now, guys, so get downloading.
I can talk about that for days too. That it's going to be a while before it's complete, but we'll get to that second.
We get to the story.
I want to make sure I give all the credit that's due to the others on the team.
Totally,
there's a misconception that it's I'm a one-man army. And I also want to clarify that it's not just me and Sir Rick either. Like,
I know. My focus has been on the fact that I zeroed in my video talking about the big bad theory. I sort of zeroed in on Sir Rick because his credit is on, or his writer's credit is on every single the main quest. And I know you've talked about him in the past being the driving for, or at least the main writer on the team. But yeah,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if there are
he's
other
definitely the
people,
principal engineer of the storyline, and has created most of these characters. But there's been a lot of other writers involved, especially because, like I said, we've been working on this since 2017. So, Poet and Son of Soul Reaver actually came up with the kind of like the loose draft in the direction we were going, and I had given them some really rough guidelines. I was like, I want it to um, teach the mechanics at the beginning, and then I said I want the story to take the player around various elements of the Commonwealth with the goal of like trying to make all of everything feel tied together, right? Because there's this problem with the settlement system that it feels disconnected from everything. So like somewhere in our quest line, we should have the player going around and doing stuff. Whatever that is, and like maybe they could go turn on the radio towers and expand their recruitment radio beacon, and that ended up being in a Sea to Glowing Sea. And then I said let's have some sort of hook to where the player builds up settlements, and those settlements provide some sort of thing like a economic resource or energy or like hitting certain numbers of settlers or something to where the progress of your settlements gates the progress of our story, and that way the player engaging in the settlement system will directly result in story payoffs. Because to me, like I will bend over backwards 9 ways from Sunday in an RPG to hear a new line of dialogue. I love it. I cannot,
yeah,
like, that is a reward in itself. Like I don't
I
need
don't,
new
I don't.
weapons. I don't need new fancy stuff. Just give me a new like hint that somebody in the game gives a damn about what I did.
Yes, I like having game impact. Like I'm a big story guy. Like I don't play a game unless I'm intrigued by the story. I don't watch a movie unless I'm intrigued by the story. Same with television shows, all of that jazz. I want the story, and so Sim Summons 2 Chapter 1, I got into it not necessarily because of the story, but I was like, this is new, the new thing, complex thing. I want to figure out how it works and get all the mechanics figured out. I was just starting to figure it out when Chapter 2 dropped. And it was like, and then I saw the story blow up. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good, and kept going, and then still worked on the mechanics, and it's just, oh man, like I was telling you before the stream, Sim Summons 2 is really the reason I became a YouTuber streamer, is because all of this inspired me. I thought I would play Fallout 4 for a little bit of time while I figure out what the next game is I want to play. Then I found Sim Summons 2, and I went, well, I guess other games can be there, and maybe I'll play them, but Fallout 4, Sim Summons 2, this is my jam now. I want my
this
jam.
is this is my jam as well. I love like I want to see more. I want to see games like this, like with like we're trying, we're doing our best to make this as like close to a Bethesda experience as possible, like
I think you
try and
did it.
work out as there's still a lot of jank, like there's still a lot of like little stuff I don't love, like
Be
the
honest,
speed of
Fallout
every.
4 was jank by itself.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, and there's a certain charm to Bethesda jank where like like if they fixed it all, like if there's not like a little bit wonky AI, like if like partway through a conversation a major NPC doesn't turn around and his back to me during Starfield, I'm gonna be disappointed. I'm like, this isn't a Bethesda game, because there's a certain amount of like you just kind of laugh at it, and like the all the and there's and as a systems designer, I really like that they embrace that everything is systems driven, right? Like they just like
Yeah.
they let the havoc happen and let the AI thing do its thing, and the quest designers try and wrangle it in to do stuff cool, but it doesn't always work out, and that's okay. I like that.
Yeah, I'm
um
into systems analysis, so this really triggered my my desire to learn, understand, and manipulate the system.
and
So
that's interesting that that you say that. So like there's a constant, we have audience members that want different things out of sim settlements, and it's hard to try and to do what everyone wants. So like some people, I think there's a lot of people who came in for the story. They don't want our complex systems. They want, or if they're going to have them, they want us to like hyper document them. Give me a tutorial on absolutely every element. But then there's people like you who part of the pleasure is in exploring and figuring it out, right? So it's like, always that's always a balance we got to walk, of like trying to figure out like, all right, what's the right level of tutorialization? How much handholding do? How's this going to play out for somebody who knows the system backward and forward already? There's a lot that goes into that, and we keep iterating on it too. Like that's why I said earlier, there's there's a lot more to do for some, like it's not complete yet because we got a lot more to go. I have said on my stream, I think it's going to take at least 2 more years to get Sim Settlements to where I want it. So there's a handful of story content stuff that got cut before the end. There's some major systems that got cut at the end, and then there's like massive quality of life and just like going through and polishing things up. You know, there's some because some of the jank we can get rid of, some of it we can fix. So
Yeah.
we can tighten up scenes so that the NPCs kind of stay where we want more. We can make it so that things are a little faster, and so that maybe we can do some custom interfaces in different places, just stuff to like make this feel a little more legit. Because there's a certain thing with mods is that like if it feels too moddy, it pulls you out of it, and it gets to a point where you're just like you hit certain things and it's just like you check out. You're like, I don't want to do this. Like, no, I'm not dealing with that. Or like you won't put up with bugs as long because you're just like, this is a garbage mod. It's never gonna work how I hope it will. And I would like to get to a point where somebody can pick up Sim Settlements 2 after having either having not played Fallout 4 or having not played it in a while, and like getting and losing track of which stuff came from SS2 and which stuff came from the base game. That's kind of the goal.
Yeah, and what's cool about it is there's some places where it's like I'm wondering if this is Sim Settlements 2 or if this was core game that I've never visited before because I've never had a reason to go explore. And that's one of my favorite parts about Sim Settlements 2 is that the story takes you places that you wouldn't have gone otherwise. There's places that
I like that as well. It's fun. I actually loved watching your deep dive. Well, that's your channel. What did you call that video? The one with the
I called it
the villain.
The Big Bad Theory is what it's called.
Bad Theory, yeah. That video that was so fun to watch because like I love watching those videos other people make about different series. So it was like kind of surreal to see somebody make one about our stuff. And it's funny, you revealed stuff in the mod that I didn't even know was there. Like this is going back to this first question. I still haven't answered it. This is you said up front you knew how I am. Your audience maybe doesn't. I tend to answer my questions in long rambly circles. So going back to the Surik thing, so I told you the first 2 writers were on board and they had kind of an overall mission for me, but I'm like, you guys just get creative with it, like do kind of whatever you want. And then they got going on it, and they had the quest line as you guys know it. I think the first 4 quests. No, that's not even true. Maybe like the first quest and the 5th quest are to our original vision, and then the Ron was in the original draft, and then everything else outside of that got changed dramatically because we slowly some writers left and new writers came in. So at some point Poet left, then it was Surik and Soul Reaver, and Surik came on as a voice actor. I couldn't tell you which character he did first, but he was part of the group that was doing the random NPCs that became part of the core part of SS2, where you recruit various settlers, and he was voicing some of them. Like I know he voiced Mr. Hansy's robot half, and I don't remember who else he voiced during that time, but he had sent me an email at some point and said, hey, I also dabble in writing if you ever have any need for some writing help. And I was like, actually, yeah, I have this quest that I asked somebody else to do, and it's missing something. Could you take a crack at it? And I couldn't tell you what quest it is, but he took a crack at it. He did a great job. And
who was it who did the ASAM sensors? Sorry to interrupt.
He did that voice as well. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. But back then, that wasn't even a thing back then, because like we're talking SS1 days when we were just doing characters. But yeah, he's done a lot of voices now in SS2. But originally he was just doing a few voices here and there. And when Poet left and Soul Reaver was by himself, so I got Surik paired up with Soul Reaver. They worked together for a while, and then Surik slowly just get handed more and more from Soul Reaver, and then Soul Reaver had to leave, and then Surik's got this thing that was a mesh of 3 different people's creations and a lot of notes from me, and then he slowly morphed it into what you guys have today. And now we've had we would have a lot of meetings throughout chapters 1 and 2, where he and I would discuss how this was going to tie into the mechanics. Like, here are the things I'm trying to get in, and I need you to tutorialize. And then around actually it was before chapter 2. So before we even launched SS2, at some point in development, Cynical Bounce, who actually came on originally as to do magazine art and helped with settlement design. Cynical Bounce and Sir Rick became good friends, and Cynical Bounce kind of became like I want to say a sounding board / editor with Sir Rick, and so Cynical helped us a lot with the ideas, and it just kind of morphed over time. And now it got to the point where I just trust those two so implicitly with the main story that, like, in chapter 3, there's a lot of stuff I have no idea what's going on. I've never seen it yet. I just trust them to do good by it. So
once
it's gonna be a fun playthrough for me.
Yeah, once I finally can get chapter 3 done, and that's not a dig. I'm just saying I haven't had time to get through it all yet.
Oh, please dig! It inspires me, man. Dig. I need the motivation to keep patching.
Once I get to chapter 3, I know you are interested in a follow-up video. There's a couple other people I think who've commented on that video that would like to see what my thoughts are on chapter 3. So yes. Once I've got chapter 3 complete myself, I'm going to start writing that. I think it's going to be good to follow up.
I will tell you, you're going to need to do all the combinations of things that can happen. I think you would have to do a minimum of 6 playthroughs. Because like even if you save scum, there's some that get locked out from you based on decisions you made early on.
I'll try and keep that in mind. After I'm
sure at some point somebody on the wiki will have like a crazy web diagram to show you how to get all the endings.
Nice. I'm gonna try my best to get into chapter 3. Probably won't be able to get through the chapter 3 on my usual stream nights. And then Starfield, I'm dedicating the entire month of September to streaming Starfield. So
nice.
If you have
everybody on our team, we're dedicating the month of September to playing Starfield and not thinking about Sim Settlements. That's going to be hard.
I'll be thinking about Sim Settlements because I'm still trying to put out YouTube content doing my For Science series. I've got season 2 going on that now. The goal is to try and get all the surrounding settlements for HQ built up before I start How to HQ, so I don't have to worry about supplies and whatnot. But that's going to be a long slog, I think, and it's going to get probably delayed because Starfield. But that was the goal.
Are you doing it in full component difficulty?
I am doing it in full component difficulty. I'm even implementing some of the techniques that I learned through struggling and trying to get the season 1 of For Science figured out, and like even streaming here, I figure out new things and new ways of doing building and the settlements, and it's really like I said, I like systems analysis, and this is feeding that. I'm still learning new ways and new methods of doing things just with Sim Settlements 2, and learning a new set of mechanics with the war desk and all that is definitely got my curiosity up. I thought I had the or the component system figured out, and then you throw a whole new system at me. Like,
You have some more components to track.
Yes.
There's gonna be a lot of like balance passes done on that stuff still. Because I think there's a very good chance we completely broke the economy with the marketplace system. So that I'm
in favor of the marketplace system, honestly, because have you seen my need for wood on my YouTube videos? It's an ongoing joke on my channel. I need wood.
Yeah, that was that was something we planned from the beginning, and it just kept getting pushed back because it was like, I'd like this introduced with the story mechanism, just because it felt like such a big thing. And so like there's been this, if you went to a caravan services worker, even in chapter 1, and talked to them, they had a custom dialogue wheel, and the Y option or the up option or whatever, I don't know what it is on the keyboard usually, but the top option it would say provision or something like that, and it would just say to do if you clicked on it. So we knew that was coming. That's why, like, when people complained about like that we can't get lead, it's too hard, it's like, I have a solution for you, but it might be a minute before you get it. But I also it tends to be that we do a really rough balance pass when we ship this stuff, and then it's like after we get all the bugs worked out and we get player feedback and we watch how it's being played, then I can start setting up like monster spreadsheets and being like, okay, let's make this, as as engaging and interesting as a typical resource game. Like I always use Factorio as our go-to comparison of like, let's make it like, obviously we don't have the cool machine part, like that satisfying part of something like Factorio, but we can do, we can do kind of depth of like, this thing depends on this, which benefits from this, etc., so that we can kind of like get to that level of like, anybody who really wants to deep dive as you're doing has a lot of things to explore and figure out.
And there's a lot of things that you want to plan from the beginning. This isn't an ad hoc sort of thing where it's like, I'm going to build a settlement. I'll put this in here, this in here. These will look nice in here. It's more of along the lines of, okay, what do I need 300 hours from now when I finally get into HQ? And
Well, and that, yeah, and that is one, yeah, absolutely. So like the core gameplay can support that, but we also have, because I've always because Sim Settlements originally was conceived as, well, let's make it so that it doesn't require any effort, right? Like, so if I'm coming in and I don't like settlements, because there was, it's a very split community. Like half the
yeah,
Fallout 4 players are like, I hate settlements, get them out of here. And so like I wanted to turn them into something that they loved, or it's like, well, this is a source of new story content, but that doesn't change the fact that those players are not interested in going into workshop mode and placing windows and doors and walls. So to satisfy both, that's when we added in the variety of options of like,
yeah.
you can go, we've got the 3 profiles, but you can also fine tune it down to granularly to every level, and then on top of that there are about 20 options you can fine tune at a per settlement level. So
Yeah.
making sure that we can support players who are not interested in systems at all, or just like, I want the story side of this, because really, like, we talked about earlier, like the characters, like that's what it's all about. And that was kind of the motivation with Sim Settlements 2, was like, it has to all be character driven. So that's why
Yes.
like the
And
big
then
feature before we even got to Sim Settlements 2
before
was
you
all
get
those
into that,
characters.
let me ask the question,
Yeah.
because it seems like we're going to go right into it anyways. How much of
Yeah.
character creation, i.e., Jake, Aiden, Old Paul, was you, and how much of that was other people?
That was almost zero me. I am not a writer. I am like
There's not just a
I
little
would
bit
like
of
to think
Jake in you?
I'd like to think I'm a good advisor. Like I like to think that I'm helpful in story meetings and stuff, and that I can help guide us in a good direction. And I like to think I can recognize good story, and that I helped encourage something, but only the writers could tell you that. I haven't had anybody tell me that they don't want me at the meetings, but probably because they have no choice because I'm in charge. But as far as I know, none of the writers are mad when I'm there and offering some suggestions. So that Rick maybe will correct me on that. So I had very little to do with that. I will say, like, certain characters came from different things. So for example, Aiden actually came from Conqueror, which was written by Super Weevil, and that storyline was an accident. So when we were developing SS2, I had this big grand plan, but I also knew that if we weren't releasing stuff regularly, all of us were going to get bored, and it would turn into one of those projects like most of the overhauls. It's almost a meme in the modding community that the giant overhaul projects always fail or never come to fruition. Like, and this is not just Bethesda. I've been modding since I was a teenager. I've been on a lot of these big giant overhaul teams. And it's always, you start working on some little element, maybe you just start, like, you're a level designer and you start building a space and you're like, okay, that took me like 12 hours and I built a space this big. Okay, great. So now if I need to build the whole world, it's going to take me, 1,000 hours. Great, I can do that. And then you start going, and then you start recruiting more people to help you. And then you realize, oh, now there's all this time for management. And so, people always bite off more than they can chew in the modding communities. And I didn't want to go that way. I wanted to do something different, because I don't like people dumping in hundreds of hours of their lives and building these wonderful creations, and then it just dies on the vine. And that's what's going to happen with most of the big Fallout mod projects. It's just the way of things. Like, I've been around enough to see that it happens. We have witness with it with Fallout 3 and New Vegas, that most of the big giant projects that were announced over the years never came to fruition and never will. And so I didn't want to be one of those. So I knew we needed to release stuff regularly. So I kind of got the people working on the story content to work on their own. Like, all right, guys, here's your mission. Go write this thing. I'll check in. We'll have meetings periodically to see if I can help you at all, if you need me to recruit more people. But otherwise, I'm going to keep working on content for the mod. I'm going to work on enhancing our systems. I'm going to work on patching. I'm going to keep a good audience relationship. That's why we have the forums and everything, where I do tutorial videos. And then, excuse me, I lost my train of thought there. So What was your last question? I better circle it back.
So,
I'm gonna talk myself in
Jake,
circles here.
Aiden, Old Paul.
Jake and Aiden, thank you. I was talking about Conqueror. That's where I was trying to get to. This is why I can't be left alone. This is what happens on my own streams. I lose track of the questions. I need to have a co-host just to keep me on focus.
Well,
So
you're just on too late for me.
fair enough.
I'd volunteer, but you're on a bit late for me.
I'm on a bit late for you. Oh, that's true. I go because I usually go till like 1 a.m. Um, so Conqueror was one of those of like, I just wanted a cool system to put out while development was going on in this giant thing. And that giant thing was originally supposed to be an expansion for SS1. It was not supposed to be SS2, but it became SS2 for technical reasons. And then I'm glad it did, because it got us a nice chance to reboot and give people a story-focused experience. But Conqueror was originally supposed to be, okay, we have the settlement system, or the city plan system. We did that with Rise of the Commonwealth, and then it just became a core. And people were talking about how there were problems with Nuka World with it. Like, it didn't work good with Nuka World. And so I was like, well, let me fix that. That'll be a cool patch. And then I started experimenting with running the Nuka World raids inside of the settlements. And it was so much fun because it's so dynamic. You have no idea where people are going to, like what part of your settlement the NPCs are going to decide are a good spot to use for cover. And so it was like super fun to do Nuke World in there, but it also felt really dumb to be attacking your own settlements, right?
Yeah.
That's always been the worst part of Nuke World. It's like the mechanic idea is cool of attacking places, but I want to attack cities I had nothing to do with. So then I started creating the pre-build system. And then once we had that, then it was like, oh, what if you could raid from the beginning? What if you could just be a raider, right? None of this, I don't want to have to get to level 35 or whatever the requirement is for Nuke World. Let's do it right from the get-go. So I got one of our writers who had been working on the in-game newspaper. So we have the new Bugle newspaper you can eventually unlock, and it has like articles that react to everything that's happened in the game world so far. And I grabbed one of the writers there, Super Weevil, and asked him, hey, can you make us our own Shank? So for those not familiar, Shank is the guy in Nuka World who lets you raid settlements. You talk to him, he pulls out his little notebook, and lets you pick, all right, here's a settlement I want to attack. Am I going to make a vassal or make an outpost? And it's like, let's just take that and let's bring it to the beginning of the game. And then from there, Super Weevil was like, hey, do you mind if I like have this character drop some like talk about things in his past that maybe we could flesh out later? And I was like, sure. So he had like these comments that he makes about different things, and we had so much fun with it. They were like, yeah, let's try and add like some little story patches. We'll do like a patch with like, here's a couple more quests, and you can continue your journey with Jammer, so he's not just like a generic raider. And so then that story kind of evolved, and then eventually we decided that we needed an antagonist, so we chose the Minutemen as the opposite to the Raiders, and we needed a character to be kind of the main antagonist, and that's how Aiden came to be. And there was such a big fan base for Conqueror that when we weren't far enough into SS2's story to have everything figured out, but we were at the same point of like trying to figure out like who's the antagonist going to be. We got to have like a good story. You've got to have an antagonist. You can't just, if you just keep going ahead and everything works out in your way, it's not going to be an interesting story. We need to have an antagonist. And we eventually got to the Gunners, but then we also started needing like, okay, well, Jake's not a fighter. Who's going to be? We need more characters here. And we kind of had that HQ thing figured out. Even I think we had the HQ playing plan before we even got to the Gunners as our adversary. It was just like you were just going to clear GNN because the Gunners are just another generic bad guy. You just go kill them and take the place. It wasn't until later we figured out that it was like, oh, well, that's perfect. We were planning on using GNN. How can we build up to that moment? And we had the 6 department head thing long ago, but they were, I think, early on, only Jake, I think all 5 of the other department heads were totally different characters early on in development. Like we had like synopsis played out for them. We had some outfit designs for some of them. We had room designs for a bunch of these other characters. And like these background stories, a lot of their generic dialogue all written, and we scrapped all of them. And I because of various writers left, and then we just had different needs. So then it was like, okay, we need a security guy, and then I pitched to them like, what if we bring in Aiden from Conqueror, because people love that character. He's like so cryptic. His voice actor is wonderful. Like River is such a talented voice actor. I always tell him that he belongs in a Hideo Kojima game. He sounds like he's Snake's brother. And so we wanted to bring him in, and and I'm glad we did. So he actually came from Conqueror. Long answer to a short question.
Nice. So let's see. We talked about Jake's. No, here's. I'm gonna do a little bit of a dig into my own question here because I could go because we can go on this. Funnily enough, we worked in most of the answers to my other questions in that long roundabout answer, so we're actually ahead of the game here. But I want to
All
dig
right.
into Jake a little bit. Like, whose personality was that based off of? Like, did he develop naturally, or like did we pick someone? Did you pick someone to model him after?
Um, so I I couldn't tell you 100% without putting words in somebody else's mouth, but I
Oh,
know that
okay.
Sarik is on record saying it's hard not to like there's some writers who will say like, oh, you shouldn't just be channeling yourself, don't just write yourself into stories. Like that's not how you do
Yes.
things. But I think that there's some truth to that, but I also think it's a lie to say that you can write without putting some of yourself into your characters. I think that that's just going to happen. Otherwise your writing is going to sound fake. It's going to fall flat. So I'm sure there's a lot of Sarik in the character.
Okay.
Um, because he's writing it. I think whoever any character you read, like there's some of the writer in there. There's some of their life experience led them to feel like that was a right line for that character to speak, right? So I think some of Sarik is in there, but I think originally the character was meant like I think when it was written before Sarik came on, it was a stand-in for me. I think that was how Son of Soul Reaver and Poet thought of it. But I am clearly no southern gentleman, so it was clearly like took a turn at some
Sir
point. But I
Rick
think that was
isn't
how the
either, if
original
you think
character
about
was
it. Yeah.
designed, of just like a friendly guy who likes to make things, right? I think
Yeah.
that was kind of the synopsis, and then
Funny thing is,
it
like,
slowly shifted.
Sir Rick really wrote him to be a believable Southern guy, even though Sir Rick is British, isn't he? English?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so he
yeah.
did a good job. There are a couple of spots where I can definitely tell it's his line because there's one or two words still in the game, I think, that are British colloquialisms rather than Southern or American.
Yeah, I know. We always joke for him, and another one of our writers who contributes a lot is Andy Cowdy. He's also British, and we always have to say we got to de-Britishize both of their stuff before we release it, so that it sneaks in. It's gotten past most of it, I think, but maybe not because now Cynical edits all this stuff, and maybe she catches it. But yeah, we have to de-Britishize a lot of stuff. Well, another funny thing that we run into is not just from writing, but from the voice actors with them pronouncing things without seeing them, and because of the timelines of how we do stuff. So we actually develop kind of wrong. In order to keep that yearly cadence, which we broke with Chapter 3, we have to be developing everything simultaneously. So there's writing happening while quests are being implemented, while voice acting is being done. So we're kind of doing things and then having to redo some work in order to keep up this pace. And then when it gets to the end, sometimes we don't have time to go redo certain stuff. So that's why you'll occasionally hear a character like say something really oddly. Like for example, different people say Concord differently. Like some people will say Concord and some people will say Concord. It's because we didn't catch it until right at the end of when we're like processing all the voice files. And then I was like, it's too late. We're stuck with it. We're stuck with the bad pronunciation. And now we do with Chapter 3. Kobus actually arranged to do live directing for most of our main characters, so that he can correct stuff like that. He can make the performances sound better. I think most people will agree that the voice performances are like way better from our major characters in these, especially in some of the later quests in Chapter 3, where some stuff gets really emotional. That I think the work really paid off because it was all live directed.
Cool. So let's take a swerve, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Um, the navigator was curious about your thoughts on Starfield, and my curiosity is more along the lines of: are we going to get sim worlds in Starfield based on what you know so far?
So I don't know. I mean, so I am on the Starfield train. I will be playing that. Like I pre-ordered it. I will be on there as soon as they launch it. If it's available September 1st to pre-play, I'll have it all pre-installed and ready to go. I'll be waking up at 6 a.m. wondering what, or no, I should say I'll be looking outside, realizing it's 6 a.m. and then I need to go to bed. I'm gonna be one of those guys for sure.
Yeah.
But as far as modding it, I don't know. Like, I didn't intend on modding Fallout 4 when it came out. I just intended on playing it. So it was just that there were enough holes in the gameplay. I loved the game enough, and it was at a point in my life where I had the free time to do it. My life's changed a lot now. Now I have 2 kids.
Well, 3
I've
if
got
you count
multiple-
Sim Summits too.
Yeah, that's right. My third, well, four. Then I got Cola. My dog's actual name is Atlas, but Atlas is the model for Cola, and
Ah,
so that was my first kid actually. So yeah, so I've got four kids, and I've got multiple companies that I work with and that I'm in charge of. Like I try to keep, I don't talk about my personal stuff in detail. So I'm not going to
yeah,
talk about
no fair.
my
That's
businesses or my kids' names or anything like that. I'll tell you my dog's name because,
yeah,
I don't care about
that's
that. No
totally
one's going to
fair.
know that.
That's totally fair.
Look
I
him up. But
enjoy.
anyway, I have a lot of real life stuff going on.
Yeah.
So with Sim Settlements was like the result of circumstances. It came out at a point when my wife got pregnant with our first son and started to go to bed like 4 hours before me every night. Like we had a routine. We always did the same things, and we had friends we went out with and stuff, and all like that just stopped one day because it was like, all right, like we used to be social drinkers, and I was like, oh yeah, that's gone. And then Fallout 4 had just put out the modding tools, and so I'm just like, yeah, I haven't modded in a while. It's been a couple years since I've modded a game, so loaded up the creation kit, and it just dug its claws into me. I got super sucked into it. So, I don't
You and
know
me
what life
both.
will feel like next year when they drop the tools, presumably, right? I don't know
Yeah.
where I'll be at. I've got this other project. Like I'm not going to just abandon Sim Settlements 2. I have a vision for how it's going to end as far as like when like how much will the content we need to get in there to where what I don't want is to people to be playing Sim Settlements 2 and being like, "Oh, I wish they had done this." You know what I mean? I don't want somebody else playing through this to be doing me to Fallout 4, taking a notebook and writing down all the missed opportunities. I want those missed opportunities to be covered. If not in the mod itself, then by somebody else in the community where we gave them the support to do it. Like this is,
Yes.
I actually think one of my biggest failings over the last couple of years has been to not keep up with the add-on makers toolkit, and that was just due to how much more difficult it is to develop a mod with a story. Like it is so much more work than the systems. Like with the systems only back with SS1, I could pump out like a pretty interesting update in 3 months. Like Industrial Revolution was a 3 month production line to do, and it has like all these buildings and this interesting production system and added in the Marshall plots. And like I was able to do that pretty quickly. Then you tackle on the project management for a story on top of it and try and incorporate the story with the quest and everything. And it's just such a different animal that I had to cut a lot of stuff to make sure that this happened. But now that the story, like the big part of the story, like I said, we have some stuff we cut, just like little side quests and some extra stuff to enhance things at the end. That stuff is so much less stress. That now I can get back into systems mode, and it's a matter of okay, when Starfield comes along, am I already going to be done with all that in SS2, or I'm chomping at the bit for another big grand thing, where because there's something so much more satisfying about working on a new, fresh vision than doing the maintenance stuff. Like the maintenance
Yeah.
stuff starts to get boring, and so that was one of the reasons that we tried to do the annual releases is because like I'm gonna burn out if all I'm doing is fixing bugs every day. Like I
Yeah.
need to have something cool to work on. So then it became like, all right, I'll work, one day on bug fixes and the next day on the cool thing and back and forth or whatever. It would be some sort of combination where I'm splitting my time so that I don't burn out. And I'm going to need that eventually. Like eventually we're going to get SS2 to the point where all that's left are bug fixes. And that'll make me quit modding if I don't have something else to work on.
Yeah. Well, I can speak for myself. I don't know if I can speak for everybody in the chat, but I will. If you decide to do a mod for Starfield, I'll be there to download it.
Nice. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's hard to say what the future holds there. Because there's another part of me, and people ask me this a lot of will you ever make your own game, and there's part of me that does want to do what has been done in the past when a mod is successful, is the person goes and tries to turn it into their own game, and there's part of me that wants to try that too. But I'll pitch this question to you because I've asked this many times to people who ask me that question of like, hey, when are you going to make your own game? And I always pitch them like, well, what is Sim Settlements? What are the elements of it that we can't lose in order to make it feel like Sim Settlements still? What do you think are like the top three? Like what are the elements about Sim Settlements that are like if we lost them, you'd be like, I'm done with this.
Well, we can't lose Jake.
Okay.
We can't lose the ability to have pre-made buildings in our settlements. Like that's like I don't know how I was about to attempt building on my own in settlements, just whatever, building here, building there, not really working on like any sort of grand scheme, for building in a settlement. Hey, Yagi, welcome to the stream.
Hey,
Please
Yogi,
smash follow. But anyways, so it's for me. It was. I didn't know how long it would have lasted if I was building everything for myself. I found Schooled Zone's no mod shop class for Sim Settlements for Fallout 4, and
mm-hmm.
he got me inspired to give it a shot. And immediately after I found him and got inspired to start building in settlements, thank you for the follow, Yagi. As soon as I got interested in doing that, I found Sim Settlements and immediately found Sim Settlements 2 next. And then Sim Settlements 2 sort of filled that in. It's like going, oh, I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time building in the settlement. I can lay down these plots and get the houses built automatically. And I was like,
Yeah.
sold. And then I started getting into it, and then the story started evolving almost right away for me. Like, I don't know if I would have stayed with the mod as long as I have if I hadn't started it right before. Zamberg, thank you for the follow. I probably butchered your name. I'm sorry. But if Chapter 2 hadn't come out as soon after I started playing as it did, I might have gone away for a while and come back, or not come back at all. But for just the timing of everything,
Yeah.
made me just like you with timing. The timing was perfect for the mod, or to make the mod. The timing was perfect for me to get into the mod, and then from there, between that and between this mod and where I was in my life and the influences I had, I wouldn't have probably gotten into being a YouTuber or a streamer if this mod hadn't come out. So
Are you enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it. Like I'm surprised at how well my Big Bad Theory video blew up. I mean, it's taking off. Like, I broke into the algorithm, so now I'm wondering if I can get out of it again. But it's to answer your question. Like I said, we need Jake. We need to have the plots, and then I think the only other thing that there would have to be a compelling story. That's
Yeah.
just I don't do things, don't watch shows, I don't play games, I don't see movies unless unless the story compels me. Like, there's some interesting aspect of the story that makes me want to keep playing. For Sim Settlements 2, it was the story of the Gunners and the mystery of the mysterious benefactor. Like, without those things, it would have been just any other story. And so
Yeah, and I kind of agree with you, and I also think that, like, our mechanics are fun for Fallout 4, but I think there's way better building games out there, right? We're not the best building game, not even close. So it's like, to me, one of the things I have trouble with is how do we separate our stuff from Fallout 4, and I'm not sure if that's possible. And like anything, like Yogi has heard me had this conversation before. I'm sure others in your audience have as well. That it's hard to dissect it. Like, what is Jake without his post-apocalyptic background, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of the mechanics that we developed are based around the realities of Fallout 4, whether it be the in-story, reality of like this junk and like everything's built. Like, obviously we could take this general idea of plots and like, let's think Starfield. Like, we could take the idea of Starfield and you look at what they've shown so far. They have those little pods, right? And like, okay, well, now you build the pod and it fills up with stuff automatically. Like that, there's a mod right there, because it looks like from the limited video we have, you're going to be decorating that stuff by yourself. So it's like, boom, there's an easy mod right there. Let's turn those pods into plots. And that idea will fit, right? That'll work. That can be pulled out of the idea of the player builds a small thing, turns into something bigger. But that's not my idea. That's just SimCity. I stole that from SimCity. Like, that idea has been around for ages. In fact, my original design goal with Sim Settlements was to be more like SimCity, where you build plots, and if you build two plots next to each other, they combine into a bigger plot. And so you could, in the end, that just wasn't feasible with Fallout 4's engine. So now we have the 1x1, 2x2, etc. But my original design intent was to get more. Actually, my very original design intent was city plans, and then I didn't figure that out until way later. But then it was, if I couldn't figure out city plans, then it was like, all right, well, let's use these workshop items, and maybe we can emulate the plots, or the plots of SimCity. And I actually think we could do it now, but the problem would be the amount of work in building enough interesting buildings to choose from, because not only would you need like 1x1 buildings, you then need a 1x2 building, a 1x I guess
You need
a
a 2x1, a 1x2.
2x2L, a two
Yeah.
by two. Yeah, you need like every combination of buildings for it to like feel correct to the gameplay of SimCity. Like that, they did a lot of work on those back in the day with the little art, sprite art to get that to feel good. And so just spent like a ton of model
Yeah.
creation.
So I will say, if there ever is a Sim Worlds, we'll need a spiritual successor to Jake.
Yeah.
We'll need a compelling story. We'll have to figure. We could. It would have to like. I don't know. One of the big things about Sim Settlements 2 story is it seems to add to Fallout 4. Now, with Chapter 3 out, it feels like the reverse. Fallout 4 adds something to Sim Settlements 2 because Sim Settlements 2 has gotten to be bigger. Like you were talking about this in one of your stream either last week or the week before. You were talking about how oh, I forgot the words. They were in my brain and then they got away.
I think I know what you're going for. So yeah,
Yeah.
the vision became like, let's make the settlements the core of the gameplay, and so eventually our story should feel like it's the main act, and that the Fallout 4 stuff is the side quests.
Yeah, like all the
So
factions
those are,
fighting
you
out or
reach to
just
those factions and their petty conflict between each other and tell, get them to stop that so they can join ours. And there's a little bit of ego in that, and that we have to be weary of. And that is why one of the things that I kept pushing the writers on is that we have to earn our place here. We do not get to half-ass this. We do not get to skip moments, like, which is why we have like an entire chapter 2 to building up to this moment of you're building up this facility. Like, we had to earn our place, because otherwise, when this is when writing falls flat, and when it like pisses off fans, is if you try and shortcut it. Like, you can't, it's like one of the things, like, a lot of people have complaints about all the new Phase 4 Marvel characters, is that they're just like coming in and they're all instantly badasses, and they don't have to go through any struggle, and then so everyone hates them because they're just supposed to be better than the original heroes. We can't do that. We couldn't just come in and be like, oh, our guys are better than the Fallout 4 people that everyone loves. Like, you got to earn your place there. And I'm not saying that we're better than them, but in order to create a story and that has a higher stakes than the base game, in a sense, then we had to earn our way there. And I hope we did. I hope we got there in a way that feels.
Have a good night, Granny Vets. Thanks for coming. So we've only got a couple minutes left because I have to hard out myself here shortly because I got a thing in about 30 minutes. But I got one final bonus question, and it's really quick. Nukes when?
I'm trying to see how to answer this without spoiling story stuff. So
just say spoilers. That'll work.
I will say there's a if you've looked at we did this plot class chart. It's like our tech tree. We put it out. It's only available on our wiki. And if you dig into the plot types section on our wiki, you'll eventually find this diagram we made, and it has a mystery thing at the end, and we haven't paid that off yet, and that's like one of the things we have to do in the post-launch content.
Gotcha.
Cool. For those who have played through all chapter 3, you guys received an item at some point that probably made you think, oh, am I getting something new? And then you never got something new. Well, that thing's coming still. So that's all I'll say.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on. Thank you for answering our questions and entertaining my chat. You've officially gotten me the most viewers I've ever had on this stream. So that's nice. Cool. So I'll sign this out then, and I'll say goodbye to you after I've ended the stream. So if you want to hang out for just a second.
Sure. If you guys want to hear more of me rambling, I'll be on tomorrow night around tomorrow about an hour from now.
Yeah, it's usually about 8:30 Eastern time. If my clock is right. Okay, so anyways, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for keeping me company in chat and hanging out with Kinggath. Tomorrow night we'll be back to our regular playthrough of Sim Settlements 2. Until then, enjoy Fallout 4 with Sim Settlements 2. Fair winds and fun gaming. Bye-bye.
Hope you ain't one of them simp.
Bye.